Hey everyone, it is Amelia here with Higher Standards Caregiver Training, here for your weekly 10-minute 2-tip Tuesday. Hopefully it is a valuable 10 minutes worth of education for you. Before we get started, as always, this information is for educational purposes only. If you hear me say something, if something in this education reminds you of someone who you think might need to be assessed by a licensed medical provider, then please make sure, make sure that you advocate for that person to get assessed and treated by the appropriate medical provider, as this is for educational purposes only. Okay, with that said, I actually want to start today by thanking the Carepreneur Show so much for having me on the other day. We had such an awesome conversation, Chris and I. If you haven't seen that yet, definitely go check it out. We had a lot of fun. I could talk to Chris forever, but that's not what you're tuned in for. Let's talk first. Well, let's talk second now. Sorry. I wanted to say that before I forgot, because last time I forgot. Let's talk about the first tip of today. And this one is for caregivers. Both of our tips today actually are really closely related, but I'm going to talk about the caregiver portion of this tip first. And I want to just start by acknowledging that caregivers are often in complex situations. Regardless of whether it's a family caregiver, a professional caregiver, a non-medical, non-skilled caregiver, often can find themselves in a pretty complex situation, and can sometimes find themselves being asked by clients or family members to do things that are outside of the scope of the services that they're actually there to provide, or can find themselves in situations where maybe they see something that they think might be medically wrong with someone, and sometimes don't really know what to do with that. So the first tip for caregivers finding themselves in these situations where they might be concerned that something is wrong with someone, or they might be being asked to do something that kind of falls outside the scope of what they are allowed to do, make sure that you say something and ask what to do. So what I mean by this is, do not take matters into your own hands. Do not provide medical care, as non-skilled caregivers are not licensed to provide medical care. We don't want to, I never want a non-skilled, non-medical caregiver to put themselves in a position, or to be put in the position of providing anything that could be considered a skilled or a medical service. So if you are asked to do something that falls outside of what you were supposed to do, don't do it, and talk to the person in your organization who can help you to navigate that, who can clarify to family members or clients what it is you are allowed to do. The second part of that, though, is if you think something's wrong, if you see something, and caregivers often identify issues that they think are wrong because they're there spending so much time with the folks that they care for. If you see something that you think is wrong, say something about it. Let the correct person know, whether you're a family caregiver, and that means reaching out to the healthcare provider for the person that you're caregiving for, or you are a professional, non-skilled, non-medical caregiver. Reach out to the appropriate person in your organization per the care plan that you are supposed to notify of things that you see wrong. Don't take matters into your own hand and try to address or in any way diagnose or any of those things to issues that you think could potentially be wrong. If you see something wrong, if you see a change that concerns you, tell the right person. Don't take those matters into your own hands. Okay, second tip, related very, very closely to that first one for caregivers, is for caregiving organizations. In order to help your caregivers follow that rule to, not step outside of the scope of services that they're allowed to provide, to make sure that they're not doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, it's so important for caregiving organizations to make clear to your caregivers who they should call when they have a concern, when they have a question, when they have an issue. And that can mean, of course, making sure that it's very clear and that in that client's care plan who that caregiver is supposed to contact about issues. But it also means making sure that your caregivers know who in the organization is their go-to if they have a question or a concern about someone that needs to be reported um, to a family member or to a different healthcare provider, a licensed healthcare provider. Um, our caregivers can only communicate as well as we give them the information and the knowledge to communicate to us what needs to be done, or if there is a problem. And we definitely don't want our caregivers to end up in situations where they're taking matters into their own hands, as that can be really dangerous for caregivers, and it can definitely be dangerous for the clients as well. So making sure caregivers know that they have the support, that they have the chain of command that they need, that they have the contact information that they need in order to make sure they know who to call if they see something that's a concern to them, or if they feel like they're being asked to do something that's outside of the scope of what they're allowed to do. Okay, so that's it. Those are the two very, very closely related tips for today. But I wanted to kind of go over that because it's been something that's been coming up in a lot of live trainings. I've talked with it about a couple people just today even, and it's so important, especially for organizations when we're providing non-skilled, non-medical care, for caregivers to understand what they are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and that their greatest power most often of the time is that if they see something they think is wrong, to say something to the right person so that the appropriate party can step in and provide any care that might be needed, rather than the caregiver feeling like that's something that is on their shoulders to do. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, you can message me over LinkedIn. Please feel to reach out. I'd be happy to chat. And until next time, I will see you next week for next week's 10-minute 2-Tip Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, I hope that you are safe, that you are well, and please take care. All right, see you later. Bye.